Hi, everybody, and welcome back to On the DL. We have a special day today because someone who's very special to me, who I know is special to a lot of people, is here and is speaking with me very candidly. Marci Ien. Hello, my friend.
Dana, lovely Dana. It's so good to see. It's so good to speak with you. It's about time. My
I
gosh.
know, I know,
I'm
because
so
we do
happy to be
so
here.
much. See,
Yeah, we do.
we have to preface by telling everybody right off the hop that Marcy and I have been friends for oh my God, 20 years. Can you believe
It's
it's
20
20
years.
years?
Yeah, yeah,
20 years.
yeah.
And aside from doing work on Candid AM as we date ourselves way back in the day, we have been saying for so long that we want to do something like just
So long.
anything, just to chat, have a conversation, let people into our world a little bit. And here we are, finally.
And here we are. And can I just say, I'm so proud of you because you did it, my friend. Look at you with this podcast. I'm so
Oh,
proud of you.
Mars, thank you. That's so kind. Coming from you, that means everything to me. When our peers recognize our work and lift us up for it, it makes us feel even that much more worthy, and it's validating. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Aw.
So I
Oh,
guess everyone knows by now that Marci Ien is MP elect for Toronto Centre. It's had a
yes.
pretty exciting election. How you feeling?
I'm feeling well, a little tired, but
Yes.
good. Getting some
Mhm.
more sleep these days. But yeah, Dana, we are one of two ridings in the country that had two elections inside of 10 months. So my dear friend Yara Sachs in York Center and I had by-elections last October. And then, of course, the general that just happened a couple of weeks ago. So I'm feeling a lot better. As I said, I'm trying to be good to myself and get the sleep that I need and get caught up on some things. But I'm feeling well, and I'm so proud of our team. So happy that we're back.
I feel like it's kind of mind-boggling if you haven't been inside the political world and to understand what all of that means. It's almost like it seems far-fetched, like it doesn't actually happen. But just having spoken with you, even briefly while you were really campaigning, it was as if I could feel you through your text. I could feel you through the phone. You know, it's just such a commitment. It's so real. And I don't think people get that. Like, it is just so, like, you are either all in 150% or you're not going to be successful.
You're absolutely right. And that is regardless of weather, regardless of how you're feeling, you go because
Mm,
basically it is the people that give you your mandate. This job is about service, and that is the bottom line. And so when you're in election mode, and I should say COVID election mode, because both
yeah.
times, we're in a pandemic, we still are, and we most certainly were last October. You've got to do things differently. And that
Hmm.
means reaching out to people. So in the by-election, I had been literally a journalist the day before, and then I declared that I was running, and all of a sudden was in a by-election. So it was about um, talking to people, answering their questions, and so many had questions about why I was doing what I was doing. A lot of them said, "Didn't I just see you on TV yesterday? What
Yeah.
are you doing calling
Well,
me now? And you're running for what?" So
yep.
just explaining all of that and talking to them about what mattered to me and understanding what mattered to them and where I saw things in the future of our riding and why I so badly want to serve. And I've had this conversation with you before, Dana, but I was born in St. Jamestown, and St. Jamestown is one of the key pieces of my riding. And what an amazing thing to be able to come full circle and now represent St. Jamestown and the other
That's
great communities in
incredible.
Toronto Centre. I just felt it was time. I wanted to give in a different way. I wanted to serve in a different way.
Whoa, that just gave me chills. I just got chills when you just said that. I'm going to get back to that in a second because I have to really talk to you about what you just said, but I want to read your bio. I know most people know who you are, of course, but everybody gets their bio read on the DL. So Here we go. Marci Ien has been elected twice to represent the riding of Toronto Centre, the latest in the federal election just a couple of weeks ago. Previously, she was a broadcast journalist who co-hosted CTV's national morning show, Candid AM, for more than a decade, and the daytime talk show, The Social, for 4 seasons. She's also an accomplished author. Her book, Off Script, Living Out Loud, here it is. It was just published last October 2020, but her biggest accomplishment is being mom to her 17-year-old daughter, Blaze, and her 10-year-old son, Dash. I love that part. That's amazing. I
My
love
babies.
and let's tell everybody, Mars and I were pregnant at the same time with our first kids. And
Yes.
I have so many memories of that summer right before you gave birth and I gave birth in
Yes.
2004, and I would waddle into the Canada AM set at some godforsaken hour because I filled in. That wasn't my full-time gig, right? I was working in local news, and I would just come in and fill in, and I would waddle in there, and I would be such a wreck. First of all, I was so pregnant, I felt horrid. But I was such a wreck waking up in the middle of the night to come to work. And I'd walk in and there was Marci. Okay, there's Marci. She's got this big, beautiful, pregnant belly. She's gorgeous and glowy. And never mind how you looked, it was always the same. You always got the same from you. It was always like, good morning, love. How are you today? What's happening? You always took the time to just speak to, well, always to me, but just speak to everybody who just came your way, like just took time, so engaging with everyone. So for me, it was just never, like, I was never, ever surprised by your career. I always was like, yeah, of course. Of course. Like it just, nothing surprised me. I just have always felt that the evolution of your career in television and broadcast journalism was so deserving and such a talent. You're so, so, so talented. But then came the election, the by-election and politics. And like the people you were calling, hi, it's Marci Ien and I'm running for Toronto Centre. And they're like, I just saw you on TV yesterday. Everybody had this same reaction, but nobody was doubting you, which must have made you feel really good.
You know, it did, but the world can say all at once. When you doubt yourself, that's another thing. And I wasn't
Oh.
sure. I wasn't sure about me. You know, I thank goodness I had, you know, friends like you and family and everybody else, and even people in the riding, but I wasn't sure. You know, I knew that I wanted to serve. I knew that this was what I wanted to do. I just didn't know that if people would get behind me and say yes. And, you know, people read me the numbers and the stats and all of those things and said, listen, this is a safe liberal riding. But that doesn't matter. I mean, politics is politics. I was up against a national party leader, a formidable one. That is not easy. And here I was a newbie. This was me stepping out of my comfort zone. This wasn't putting together a report or getting ready for an interview. This was a completely different thing. I was completely uncomfortable, but I really do find that that's where you find the biggest lessons. You learn the biggest lessons when you're not comfortable. And boy, I learned a lot.
Can we talk about that? Because as much as I want to talk all about you and everything that you're doing and your book 100%, because I was very moved by a lot that you divulge in the book, but I think that space that you're talking about, where we get out of our comfort zone, where we start to lean to one side and say, here I go, I'm making the change. Here I go, I'm making that change. What is that like?
Well, it's difficult. You know, the people closest to me, my parents, are immigrants. You know, I come from a family where 2 people left Trinidad and Tobago in the 60s and they settled in St. Jamestown. And so when you come from that kind of background, the notion is to play it safe. You know, the most important thing, my dad would always say to me, just make sure you have a pension. Make sure you work hard and, you know, you do all the right things, but make sure, you know, pension's important. And here I was throwing my career up into the air at the age of 52 and throwing the lives of my kids up into the air at the age of 52 and embarking on something very new and very risky, frankly, very risky, because the job that I have is a job that the people elect me to do. And if they're not happy, then I won't be elected. If they don't see, if they don't think that the work that I'm doing or the work of our team is what they need or what they want, then I'm gone. So basically, I'm at the mercy, and that's a very different thing, and that's a very difficult thing. So, you know, um, those closest to me weren't so sure. They really weren't so sure, and that was hard. They came around, obviously, but just to dive in like that is a scary, scary thing. And I was scared. There were days I woke up and thought, what have I done? Did I do the right thing? What have I gotten myself into? What have I gotten my family into? This is, what am I thinking? And then there were days, I would meet somebody on the campaign trail in the street, a young person who said, listen, I've never voted before, but wow, you look like me. And I might just think about it this time. Tell me more. Or wow, you come from the same place I do. Things like that matter. And that is another reason why I wanted to run, because I wanted to show it was possible, not just for a woman that's 52 years old and that isn't done, that it still has a story to tell and still has work to do, but also a Black woman who wants to be a part of the governing of this country and be in the halls of power and be able to share my lived experience, because that hasn't happened enough either. And to be able to be, at those tables and say, listen, I actually experienced this. This is what I think we should do, or this is what I think should be ingrained in the policy we're working on. And that's very important too.
So that's two areas, because you're talking about a certain age where,
yes,
I mean, ageism is horrific. And you're also talking about your lived experience as a Black woman in Canada. And those are two major topics and two things that you bring to the table. Most women would say, okay, well, I'm 52 and I've done most of my work, and now I'm just going to do something else, maybe a little bit easier, take it easier, maybe just kind of calm it down, settle down a bit. Or maybe that's what people think we should say once we reach the age of 50 or 52. And then you combine that with your lived experience as a Black Canadian woman. And so that's huge. And that's inspiring.
It's what I've talked to a lot of women about. I mean, honestly, I was 3 years away from early retirement. That's the bottom line.
Were you really, though? Like, were you actually thinking about it?
Well, I wasn't thinking, well, maybe the TV part,
Really?
I would think about that sometimes and doing it maybe differently. Wow. Yes. Maybe doing it differently, maybe producing, maybe looking at other things.
No
there
way.
Was that. Yeah. So there was that.
I never knew that before.
About it. I never said it out loud, but in my head, I was thinking, there's so many things. There's a doc that I still want to do on my dad and his journey. And I actually went to Boston just before Canada AM was canceled. I went to Boston and I went to Harvard, and I found my dad's old dorm. And I wanted to work on a documentary on my dad being this Black kid from Trinidad who won a scholarship to Harvard. It's unbelievable. Incredible. And then the people that he met here, and there's just so much I wanted to do. And I thought, maybe it's time, to look at those projects, look at the things that I never got to do. Maybe I should start to think about that. And then this happened, and I went in this direction. But it's important because I think as women, we hit a certain age and either society tells us we're almost done, or we start to tell ourselves that we're almost done. And you know all about that. I mean, you were a risk taker as well, to the max. So you know all about that. But it's important for people to see the directions that we've taken and understand that things are possible and that there is no expiration date. And it's most certainly not at the age of 50.
I love that you just said that. I do. I love that you just said that. We have no expiration date, people.
We
It is
do
the
not.
truth. We do
It
not.
is.
We get better with age. That's how I feel anyways. I've never felt so good in my life.
Absolutely.
That's how I'm
Absolutely.
feeling. So you're talking about your dad, and that is a great way for me to segue to your incredible book. This is beautiful. I want to ask you,
Thank
first I
you.
want to ask you about the title,
Mm,
Off Script, Living Out Loud. What does living out loud mean?
mm. It means telling your truth. It means being
Mm,
authentic. It means that for most of my professional life, I read a teleprompter. I was on script
mm-hmm,
and read the news headlines or read to introduce different guests or whatever it may be. This is the stuff behind the scenes. It's kind of the stories you thought you knew or things that you might remember, but what was happening behind the scenes, what was happening in my life personally. That's what off script is. And I really, Dana, had to write something that was true to me. And so, it's not that it was always easy to write because it meant reliving a lot of different things, but
mm,
it is absolutely my truth.
mm,
And I thought it was important to be authentic, important for people to see that there was a lot more behind that smiling face they saw every morning or afternoon, that
mm-hmm,
sometimes,
mm-hmm,
behind that smile, there was distress. There were tears that I could not show because you've got a job to do, you do it. There's a chapter
mm-hmm.
in the book called Dance Baby Dance. And that's what it's about. It's about just feeling at my worst and still having to get up in the morning, those early mornings you talked about, and do my job when I was just dying on the inside.
Didn't you find though that those, whether they were early mornings or not, but going to do your job actually saved your life?
Yes, yes. Being busy and being
Mm-hmm,
focused and
mm-hmm,
focused on others and not
mm-hmm,
myself did. But there
mm-hmm,
comes a time when there is a reckoning. And it's a way of coping. And I'm glad I had it. Way of coping, being able to go to work and be busy. It is absolutely a way of coping. But, there's a time where you kind of have to deal, and you've got to deal with why you want to be so busy and what you're not dealing with and what you're repressing. And so there's all of that too.
wow, that's so true. I could attest to that. That's so true. Buried myself in work for far too long, until I made some significant changes. And your dad, as you had, so how you dedicate a chapter to him and you talk about him throughout the book. There's a theme. So many times you're quoting him, but your dad, and I want to get the quote properly, where you had said that we're talking about change, and your dad has said, change, even when you didn't go looking for it, can be wrapped up in opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How
And
wise.
it was so wise. And he said that to me after Canada AM ended.
Mm,
And he said to me, what if this all happened just for you? Because I was distraught. When AM
mm,
ended, I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? What's going to happen? And he said, just what if this happened just for you? Maybe you needed not to be waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning anymore.
my
Maybe you
God.
needed to have right and spend more time with your family in a different way. Maybe you needed a new opportunity. Maybe, you know, your voice, but differently, needed to be heard. And that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened. I remembered those first few weeks and months on the social, and the country started to see and experience a side of you that we didn't get on Canada Am. And it was incredible. Like you always had a voice, you always had a national voice, but this was different. This was like you just sat back in that chair and you just were able to you were able to speak, and you just spoke more and more and more, and really it was really something to watch. I loved it.
Well, well, doing thanks so much, Dane. But doing news, as you know, we have to come, meet our stories with and the people in them with a sense of neutrality.
Mhm,
It isn't about opinion. It's about telling the story as it is and telling the truth of that story and interviewing. It isn't about interjecting with opinion or your life
mhm.
experience or whatever it is. But on the social, it was the exact opposite. It
Yes.
was, we want to know about you. You are the story. how do you relate to what we're talking about? You know, what can you share with our viewers, you know, that can highlight what these stories are and what they mean to you or your experiences. And so that's why the voice changed. And you're right. I heard from so many people who said, we thought we knew you.
Oh God, it was my
Turns
fave.
out we didn't. Turns out we didn't know you. Turns out there's a lot we didn't know.
I actually, my favorite is, I'm not going to, someone had said, it was actually someone professionally had said to me, oh my God, I was not expecting Marci like that. She's unbelievable, way cooler than I thought. And I thought, yeah, she's got an edge. Most women have an edge, but it
We
is
have an edge.
suppressed, you know, when you are a news personality, like you said, you don't bring anything except for the inquisitive voice, right? You're trying to get that story out and get what you can out of people to create and bring life to information. But then when you were on the social, you were giving of yourself, which I have to say is not so easy, because people would assume that that is an easy thing to do, to just sit and chat with a bunch of other women. It is not easy. I did it once. And there was noise in the back of my head the entire hour that we were live on that show. I kept thinking, oh my God, oh my gosh, I shouldn't say that. Oh my goodness, can I say that? Am I allowed to say that? Because you always have that news feeling on your shoulders and that voice in the back of your head saying, I don't think you can say that. But that gets torn down, I guess, over time. And it did for you, obviously.
It did, but there were times, I mean, I spoke about my family a lot, and there were times I would check in, you know, with Blaze, check in with my niece's sister, whoever it was, just to say, listen, I'm thinking about talking about this on the show today. How do you feel about that? Or is this okay? Because it isn't just about the person sitting in the chair. When that person starts talking about their experience, that experience usually is wrapped up in family and friends and all sorts of things. So, you know, sometimes it was checking in with friends and family to make sure that they were okay with me mentioning.
And were there times that they were not okay?
No, and surprisingly enough, that it didn't happen. And some of the issues were hard issues. Some of the issues were hard issues, especially you know with Blazy. They were hard issues, but she said, "Nope, share my story. Absolutely, share my story."
Wow. That's unbelievable. So I have to tell everyone, I saw Blazy the other day, and I haven't seen her in a long time. And, you know, like she's like the rest of our children. She's all grown up. But really, it was mind boggling to me just chatting with her. She has so much of you in her. She has so much of you in her. Do you feel that too when you're around your kids? Because I don't know Dash as well. He's still little, right? He's
still lives. So Dash is 10, and he's a going concern. A mile a minute, he'd be peppering you with questions. Blaze is more reserved, but when she gets going and she's comfortable, the conversations happen, and she's brilliant. And I do, you know, she tells me right now she's in grade 12. And she tells me that journalism is the direction she wants to go in, which warms my heart. And we'll see if, you know, we'll see if that continues to be the route. But regardless, I'm always proud of her. And I do. She's tenacious. She works so hard. She cares. She cares about people. She's got a big heart, but she's got a tender heart too. She's got a very, very tender heart. So I always need to be looking out for that and looking after that.
You did good, Marce. You did really good. She's a good one. I was loving speaking with her. I think that the idea of the change from journalist to politics, right? A lot of people have said, well, that seems like a natural progression because you're comfortable with people, you're comfortable in front of cameras, you're comfortable with large groups. But I see that as the natural progression is more the fact finder, the truth teller, the person who's able to ask the hard questions and get the answers from your community. Do you find that too? Do you find all the skills that you were able to hone in during your journalism or your journalistic career, now you're finding that you're really using those skills even more so?
Oh, absolutely. The connectivity part is huge. Just being able to connect to people, more importantly, to
Mm-hmm.
listen and understand where people are coming from and understanding the things that they need, but absolutely the fact finding. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there are people in my writing who, you know, have immigration cases, for example. And so it is making sure that they are going the right route and they are in touch with the right people and they filled out the right paperwork and keeping on top of that. And that is a fact finding mission sometimes. Delegating work, you know, who can best handle what. We have our communities divvied up so that there is one person from our office that kind of represents and as an ambassador of each community. So they are plugged in to at a grassroots level. What is
Wow.
going on there, right? What are the events we need to know about? What do people care about? Because my writing really does reflect all of Canada, Dana. And I say that because it is diverse in so many ways, not just
Mm-hmm.
racially diverse, but we have, you know, the largest LGBTQ2S community in the country, the villages in my writing. We have the largest urban indigenous community outside of Saskatchewan in our writing.
Wow.
And then of
I didn't know
course,
that.
yes, and then economic
Wow.
diversity. So I have
Mm-hmm.
Cabbagetown, and then I have Moss Park and
Mm-hmm.
Regent Park. So you've got very different situations economically. It's so diverse. I've got Bay Street. I've got, Ryerson, George Brown. There's a lot going on. So students, I've got seniors, I've got a large arts community because Massey Hall, the National Ballet School, like there's so many different interesting things, but it's serving all of these different facets. And it so reflects, I think, Canada as a whole. It's the smallest riding in the country. It's the smallest, but
Oh,
it
really?
also is, but it's the most
Mm.
diverse. It's the most diverse.
Do you think you'll write a book one day about your experience in politics?
I think so, because there's more to tell. I think there's got to be an off script part two somewhere in there. It's
Because
what this job is teaching and beyond. Yeah.
I also found that when I was reading this, like for example, I forgot about the car accident that you were in,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm reading that, and I was like, I can't believe we haven't talked about this in so long. It feels like it was so long ago, but it was such a significant part of your life, and you write
Mm-hmm.
about that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
You write about so many life changes, major life changes for yourself and your family, and so I wonder if you write a book while you're in service, about your time in service, what we will find out about you and Marci behind the scenes. Like there's always
Yeah.
something that's happening. There's always a story. Everybody has a story, right? So I think that would be a really fabulous book.
I think I might. I'm already starting to take notes. I keep a little
Oh,
diary,
really?
so I'm already, yeah.
Oh,
And I actually used a lot of notes that I was able to look back at just how I was feeling, with regards to that accident in particular, and
wow,
that time
Mars.
in my life. Look back and, oh yeah, this happened, and oh yeah, I don't want to forget to, because I had notes, because I had journals, and so I'm doing that now. So
Wow.
we'll see how that works out. Do you keep a journal?
I do not. I
You
do not. I'm
should.
going to tell you something.
You should.
I was going to say this is very personal, but we're on the DL,
Here
and
we
I mean,
are. Here we are
here
on
we
the
are on the
deal.
DL. I talk about everything that's personal, which is so funny because I talked about being on the social where I could barely open my mouth. I don't know what was going on with me that day, but here on the podcast, I could say anything. I talk about everything. Um, I kept a very large, almost like it was a religious book for me, the way I wrote in my journal when I was going through my separation with my first husband. And it was my everything. It was like I could not wait till my day ended, that I could just shut my door. Kids were in bed. They were very, very young at the time, but I could just journal, and I was able to actually write like this, like a pen.
Mm-hmm.
Most
Mm-hmm.
people don't use these anymore. They're typing away. And there was something that was so relieving about that, and yet so painful. And when I stopped journaling, I couldn't go back to it.
Hmm.
Couldn't go back to
You
it.
know,
Mhm.
maybe, and thanks for sharing that, Dane. Maybe
Of
it's a
course.
matter, if you do write, maybe it's just about that period in your life. I bet there's enough there for a book.
Oh
You
my
know, maybe it's
goodness.
just right.
Oh.
Maybe it's just about what you wrote during that time.
Oh, yeah, it was painful. I mean, whenever you write about something that's painful that causes change, change is painful, right? Like what your
Hmm.
dad had talked about, it it can be wrapped up in opportunity. So we make changes because we need to.
We need to, and we don't know we need to. You know, change happens in different ways. Sometimes we don't change because we get complicit and complacent and all the
Mhm.
things, and so sometimes, you know, change comes in the way of a new job because your old job is no more,
Mhm.
or it comes because a marriage broke down, or it comes because, you know, there's sickness, somebody close to you, there are health issues. I mean, change comes in so many forms. Sometimes we choose it, or sometimes we're chosen, and that's a completely different thing.
What do
But
you say
I
to
do.
each?
Hmm,
What do
the
you say to that?
chosen part is
Hmm.
very, very hard.
Hmm.
I you know, this job, the way it came about was quite interesting, because somebody chose me. Somebody chose, you know, just to reach out and say, this woman would be a great representative for Toronto Centre. Um, I ended up getting a phone call first from the Prime Minister's chief of staff, and then from the Prime Minister. And the message was very, very clear. We'd like
What?
you. Would you consider running? And that's what I mean, because it wasn't on my radar. This wasn't something that I had, you know, on a list of things that I ever wanted
I
to do. As I said,
know.
I was thinking maybe about producing something, maybe, but
Yeah.
I was not thinking about running, you
Oh,
know, in an election in Toronto. I had no idea that this would happen, but it did. And I couldn't say no to it right away. And so I had to think about it. I had to think about, you know, all of the things, and what this would mean and everything. And it happened at a time where the world had just seen George Floyd die. Um, there were people marching in the streets in support of Black lives, Indigenous law, like so much was going on. Women's issues, Me Too. I mean, all of this was happening, but front and center was Black lives and the Black
mhm.
Lives Matter movement. And I just thought to myself, you know, I'm on a show every day where I'm sharing my stories, and I'm trying to share them so that people can take away from them something and hopefully learn and feel stronger, whatever it is. And I really saw that as a way of to serve, that I was serving and hopefully helping people. But this was a different kind of service. And at the time that it was, I thought, it's got to be now. It has to be now. I'm a Black woman in this country with a national voice. What can I do to make things better? How can I do things to be an example or continue to be an example? And everything that came back at me in my own head was this: you've got to run, you've got to do this. And I was scared to death, and
Oh
I did
yeah.
it anyway. I was scared to death, but I did it anyway, and I'm so glad that I did. So that's the chosen. That's the chosen part. And I don't know, that's a big word to use, but somebody made a choice to call me, so that happened. um, the things you choose, sometimes they can come back to bite you. But I do think that there are lessons every time. There are lessons every single time. I do believe that. Um, that we make choices. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't work out, but there are things that you can use in the journey that you're on to, you know, make better choices the next time.
Hmm. Absolutely. And what does your dad say now about the journey that you're on?
Mm. So my dad hasn't been so well. My dad had a couple of strokes several years ago, But most recently, he hasn't been doing so well. He
So
knows that I
sorry.
ran. Oh, it's
Oh,
okay.
he does
Thank you,
know.
though.
He knows.
He
He
knows,
does
he
know.
knows, he
Okay.
knows that I ran. He knows that I've run
Mm-hmm.
twice.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just not articulating a lot right now.
Okay.
But I know in his heart of hearts, that he's proud. I know that. I absolutely know that. He just isn't and can't articulate things the way that I'm used to hearing from him. It's hard right now because
That's hard.
we're getting into basketball season, and
I
that's what I do with
know.
my dad.
I know.
So we're getting into basketball season. The Raptors have had a preseason game already. And I miss, sitting in that seat with him and talking about our lives. And most of the stuff that you read about in my book come from those conversations where we were just sitting beside each other,
Oh,
uh, you know,
wow.
before the Raptors took to the floor, or even after a game ended, and or on the subway home. A lot of those conversations happened around basketball, around games, because that was our time. And so I'm really missing him right now, and his wisdom.
Do you feel like that's part of, I know you love our Raptors. I know you love them. You're true to them through and through, but do you feel like a part of your love for the game and for the Raptors is because of the experience you have with your dad, have had with him? Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Such
Oh my
sacred time,
gosh,
right?
sacred time. And
Mm-hmm.
the lessons, I mean, that
Mm,
that he taught me, and the things that he shared, but also that whole idea that we are we're not here forever,
mm,
and we can't take life for granted, and the people that we love for granted. It's important that we love hard, that we love very,
mm.
very hard and well.
It's so beautiful. I love that. We share, I mean, we share so many things, but our love for our dads are very similar. And my dad was so wise too. Unfortunately, he passed away 5 years ago now, but he always had such wise things to say to me, and particularly around career and around love. Like those were the two
Mhm.
big things we used to talk
The
about
most
a lot.
important things.
I guess, but he would just always have these, words of, or his pearls of wisdom. He'd always share them with me, whether I wanted to hear it or not. And you and I have that relationship with our dads. And my dad always used to say to me, it's about the journey. It's not about the
Yes.
end. It's not the end. It's not the winner. It's not what you come out with. It's just every step along the way. And he was
Yes.
all about whether you love it or you hate it, you have to be in it. You got to be all in.
You got to be all in.
Right. He
All
used to always
in.
say that to me. You got to be all in, whether you love it or you hate it, you got to be all in.
Right.
And I've
And your dad
always,
was a runner, right?
yes, he was an Olympian.
Yeah, he was an
Yes.
Olympian, and
He
this
was an
is what I
Olympian.
mean. He was an
Mm-hmm.
Olympian, so
Mm-hmm.
special, but that's it. It's the journey, and he
Yeah,
knew that. It's the race. It's the race, and the race isn't
exactly.
a quick race.
That's
It's a
right.
measured race.
Right. Even though it's just so interesting because his, his, uh, I guess his Olympic career was about the race, right? You either come in first or you don't. But that wasn't what it was for him. And it taught him as an athlete, it was about being all in or not. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel that with you when you speak of your dad and the wisdom, and you carry that with you forever, whether he's articulating it or now, because I do believe that when you're connected to a parent, when you're that connected to either your mom or your dad or both, whether they're physically here or not, they know. I feel like they
They
know.
know. They know.
Yeah, I do. I get signs all the time from my dad. I just got one the other day. I almost freaked out. I was
Really?
like, that was crazy. I'm like, that
What
was just,
happened?
well, I've had some stuff going on professionally, and it's sometimes whether good or bad, I always say, oh God, I wish I could just talk to my dad. I just want him to hear what's happening. So, but I'll share with you. I don't do that. I don't sit in my bathroom or my room and I talk to my dad, or my car. I just don't do that. A lot of people say, oh, you should do that. You should just talk to your dad. I'm like, I don't do that. But um, anyway, some stuff was coming down professionally, and it was all good stuff. And I am I'm a little obsessive compulsive. I don't know if you know that about me, but when I leave and like the house in the morning or whenever. I like things my way. So like my bed has to
Yes.
be made, and like
Yes.
doors have to be shut, whatever. So I know for sure that I had shut the door in my son's room because my dog was coming home in the afternoon. I didn't want him to run into the into my son's room. And anyways, I came into my house, and we have a portable, this little air conditioning unit that we have just to cool off our bedroom, just like this little thing. Anyways, there's no way I left this on when I went out. It shouldn't be on because it wasn't warm enough to have on. But I came in and that was on, and my son's door was open. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm like,
no, it
I'm
doesn't. No,
telling
no,
you,
no.
my father is here. He's sending me a sign, and he's saying, I know what's going on with you, and you are all in. That's all I heard that. So when your dad talks about change and knowing that change is somehow a new opportunity, I guess that's probably how you will go about things now, you know, when you can take a step out and look at it.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly the way. That's exactly the way. It takes courage to do it though, because we second guess ourselves, and you know, things are never easy. Change is never easy. But it's the harder things that help us. It really is. And it's just remembering that all the time.
And I want to say congratulations to you for these both elections. I mean, incredible work that you've done. You are so inspirational, not just as such a good friend, but to every woman of every walk of life, of every age. I know that women look up to you and want to aspire and listen to you speak, because you are so real and you care so much about people, whether you're on television or you're in Ottawa or you are serving a community. You are just, you're really all that. And I'm so blessed to call you friend and just know you, really. I'm so grateful that you were here today too, that you finally came on and we got to chit chat and talk about life, which is so good.
So happy.
So what happens for you the next few weeks? What's life like for you?
Well, hopefully we get sworn in the next couple of weeks. So in the by-election, it was just Yara and I. Yeah. But this time there are 338 members across this country that have to be sworn in. And a lot of people don't realize that even incumbents have to be sworn in again. So right now, you know, nobody's in. A cabinet hasn't been announced. Just because you were a cabinet minister last time may not be the situation this time. Like, everything changes. So hopefully we're sworn in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, it's meetings with constituents, it's returning emails, it's a lot of thank yous, a lot of in-person thank yous. I've got a couple of small events for volunteers that helped so much during the campaign, just to say thank you. A lot of thank you phone calls, just trying to solve some problems for some people. There are a couple of people right now that have an issue with space. There isn't a lot of space, for example, in St. Jamestown. And that community needs some space for its kids, not just to play, but to have, you know, there's a teacher in particular that has an after-school program. She teaches in Tamil, the Tamil language and culture, to kids in St. Jamestown, and doesn't have a space to do it. There just isn't. It is such a packed neighborhood, the most packed neighborhood in the country, just because of the apartment buildings and everything else. But there just aren't a lot of meeting spaces. And so trying to, you know, find a solution with regards to that, finding some space for her to teach and for kids to gather, and making phone calls. And these are the things that I'll be doing until Ottawa calls. And so we're back.
So people they'll send me messages and they'll say, how do I get to Marci? How do I find Marci? First of all, I know this is on Amazon, but is there somewhere else they can find this? Your book? Yeah,
anywhere. Indigo as well. Any place that sells books in this country and abroad has it. And also, I was so pleased to record the audiobook. And I know for
Yes.
some people, audio is the way they like to go. They like to listen to their books. And it was so much fun. Oh my gosh, last summer, recording the audio. It was amazing to record my own story, record the words that I had written. So the audiobook is available too,
Okay, incredible.
wherever audiobooks are sold.
And then if people want to reach out to you, is there a way through I guess Twitter, or is there any other way they can find you?
Yes. So on Instagram, I'm
Yep.
Marci.Ien and I do respond. And on
Yes, you
Twitter,
do.
I'm at Marci Ien. So just my name combined. So it's
Hmm.
Marci.Ien on Instagram, at Marci Ien on Twitter, as well as Facebook. Although I really I'm not on Facebook a lot, I
I
have to
know.
tell people.
Yes.
I am mostly on Twitter and Instagram. And then with regards to the office, it's Marci.Ien at parl, as in parliamentary,
Hmm.
.gc, as in government Canada, .ca. So
Okay.
Marci.Ien at parl.gc.ca and on social media channels.
Thank you, Marci.
Thank you so much, Dane. Love, love,
I'm
love you.
so
Thank you.
glad
This was
we
fun.
did this. It was so good. It was so good to
Thank you.
connect. Thank you so much.
Thank,
Be well. Feel good.
thank you. I do. I hope you do too. You should.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.